Hello listeners, my name is Leah Devendorf.
And my name is Abigail Fireison.
We're both undergrads at the University of Virginia with an interest in astronomy and space travel, specifically space travel to Mars.
In this podcast, we talk about the challenges of humans traveling to and living on Mars, and then investigate possible solutions to those challenges.
This is Mission to Mars. Episode 4, Mars in the Mind.
Okay, so getting to Mars is hard. A big reason for that is the toll that being in space for a long time has on the human body. It's hard enough to account for all the food, water, and oxygen that astronauts need for the trip, but then there's prolonged exposure to zero gravity and the solar and cosmic radiation that can really impact people physically.
Especially with the current plans for a round trip to Mars being 900 days or more.
Yeah.
But what's the impact of being in space for that long on a human's mind? We wanted to investigate how being with the same people in the same capsule in the empty vacuum of space for over 2 years impacts the astronaut's mental health.
There have been multiple isolation studies, and some ongoing, both in the US and abroad, that simulate these conditions for going to Mars to see how astronauts' general mental health and morale are affected. Many have been published, or at least described, online.
We wanted more than just words on a page, though, so we decided to reach out to UVA professor who knows more on the topic.
I'm Ed Murphy. I'm a professor in the astronomy department and the instructor for Astronomy 3450 Mission to Mars.
Professor Murphy believes that going to Mars will be very tough on astronauts mentally, for multiple reasons.
One of those reasons is that the astronauts will be very isolated for a long time. There is a big difference between living on space on the ISS and living on space while traveling to Mars. To start, the communication delay between the Earth and the crew will slowly increase. It could be 10 to 40 minutes at the end, depending on where Mars is relative to the Earth. The crew will be functionally completely isolated from their families back home. They also won't be able to video call with psychologists the way that they do now, meaning any mental health problems will have to be either planned out and solved beforehand, or dealt with on the ship with the same people you will be spending years with.
You're going to be separated from your family and friends and loved ones, and very quickly after you leave Earth, you're going to lose real-time contact with them. And you're going to end up in the situation where the best you can do is maybe record a video for them and send it back to Earth, and they can record a video response and send it back. But astronauts on the International Space Station right now, they can make a call home to spouses and family, and there's no delay, right? They can literally talk to their children in real time, whereas going to Mars, you're not going to have the option to do that.
For around 900 days, astronauts will only have normal communication with their crewmates. Not with anyone back home, including mission control or their loved ones, like Professor Murphy mentioned. This lack of communication can cause loneliness in astronauts, lowering their overall morale and mood during the trip to Mars.
Isolation from Earth can do more than cause loneliness and depression, though. It could be the catalyst for inter-crew conflict.
Although we didn't mention it much while talking with Professor Murphy, other studies have shown how spending so much time with the same people can lead to conflict. One experiment was the Mars 500 isolation study, conducted from 2010 to 2011 with 6 astronauts of varying nationalities.
During the experiment, astronauts were kept in a realistic Mars space capsule for 520 days, where multiple factors of isolation, including an increase in communications delay over time to mission control, were simulated. The study found that, especially 3 quarters into the mission, interpersonal conflict increased between astronauts in the simulation, while more casual socialization decreased. Evidently, long periods spent in isolation could alter social patterns between the astronauts, potentially complicating relationships between them, which is dangerous when, on the way to Mars, all they have to rely on, effectively, is each other. That's just another factor of the challenge of isolation in space.
The attitude among astronauts poses some concerns for tracking their mental states. They don't want to disclose anything that could get them banned from flying. If an astronaut feels scared, homesick, or depressed on a long mission, they tend to keep it to themselves. Have there been any other astronauts in the past that have admitted to feeling scared?
I'll tell you, I think it's really interesting. No, there hasn't. And that doesn't mean that it hasn't been there. It's that there is also this code amongst the astronauts, for lack of a better term, I don't think any of them would admit to it. Because first of all, it will immediately, in the astronaut corps, and I would argue even to this day, there is still a bit of this fighter pilot, test pilot. In the old days when it was all men, machismo, where they were, that no one would admit to being afraid. No one would admit that what they were doing was dangerous. And I think that still carries on into the astronaut corps today.
On a multi-year-long mission, filled mainly with travel to and from the planet, something has to keep the astronauts busy.
A normal day on the ISS is jam-packed with scientific experimentation, meal times and sleep times, and 2 hours of exercise. While eating, sleeping, and lots of exercise are still needed on the way to Mars, the ability to do science is called into question.
The thing is, there's lots of stuff you could do with, right, like we do on the International Space Station today with experiments and things, but then you have to say, well, we can't send all that mass to Mars, right? Because we're already sending them with the food and the water and the oxygen, everything they need for 3 years, we don't have the XX payload capacity to send up dozens of experiments and, you can imagine a telescope or something like that they could use for doing research. They just can't do that.
This begs the question, what are the astronauts supposed to do with all that time?
This is where the challenge of boredom comes in.
So one of the big things that should not be overlooked is entertainment. And I think we live in a great age for that, right? So they can bring the equivalent of a Kindle and they can download, because even though the download times will be a long time, we can send them, first of all, with hundreds and hundreds of books, but they can always download a new book, right? They can put a request into NASA, and then while they're working during the day, that book can slowly be downloading. They can do the same thing with movies and music and stuff. So I think we live in an age where the astronauts will have a lot more access to entertainment options.
Modern technology allows for lots of ways to consume entertainment. Astronauts will be able to download books, movies, and TV for their journey. Even the rigidly scheduled ISS makes times for weekly movie nights to boost morale.
Still, we all want to do more than watch TV for months, especially in a setting as cramped as a spacecraft. Any activity that could get the crew to work together, like board games, could be useful. You can't discuss long space travel without discussing the food. Food not only provides essential nutrition to astronauts, but also spices up their life, pun intended.
Normally, astronauts have meals meticulously crafted to make them happy. Everybody on the ISS is given options of what they can eat.
But the food still isn't exactly 5 stars, and astronauts can still get tired of it.
We know that, the astronauts on the space station can put up with it for 6 months, but you know that you're in this for 2.5 years, right, to get to Mars and get back again. So, right, if you get tired of the food after a month, it's like, boy, I got a lot of time I got to spend doing this.
As Professor Murphy says, having mediocre food for months and months on end can impact astronauts negatively.
So, one way to boost mental health and general spirits for astronauts is to have good food. In reality, having fresh food is the best for us. It's something astronauts enjoy when they get it on the ISS, but you can't really pack fresh fruits and vegetables on a whole 200-day journey to Mars and a 200-day journey back.
Yeah, you can't pack it, but maybe you can grow it.
One of the things we could and should do, because it's shown, I think, both mental health benefits on the International Space Station, is actually trying to grow plants. Because the astronauts on the International Space Station find that trying to grow plants, it's not just scientifically useful, but they actually find it's a big morale boost because they've got something to care for, to care about, and to take care of every day, something else that's living.
So, growing plants on the way to Mars could give astronauts some more flavor in their diet. Good for morale, but it could also give them something to care for and strive towards on the long trip to Mars, probably alleviating some boredom and further lifting spirits. But how important is mental health to the mission anyway? After all, astronauts have been known to put up with a lot. In the face of such a massive historic accomplishment, shouldn't we put aside some of our human needs for the goal? Shouldn't the quest for science outweigh the more temporary needs of the crew?
That's the argument made in the book, The Case for Mars, written by Robert Zubrin. Zubrin argues that the mental and physical strife that astronauts must endure has been endured to similar degrees by humans throughout history. Because of this, Zubrin argues, we don't really need to worry about the mental health of astronauts in space. Humans are resilient enough to make it through.
But at the end of the day, it's not just about raw resilience. It's about the preservation of the astronauts' productivity and of the sharpness of their minds. During Skylab 4, the last mission for the American Space Station Skylab, a mutiny of sorts was staged by the crew. An additional month added to the mission, more exercise and testing of the physical health to compensate, and overall overscheduling led to worse work output from the astronauts. Eventually, they'd had enough and took a day off for themselves. After negotiation with NASA, where the crew could get more freedom, productivity improved immensely, and the mission was considered a success. Since then, NASA has been carefully considering the mental health of its crew. Do you think NASA would be willing to prioritize mental health, if it came at the expense of we won't be able to do as much science on Mars?
Yes. Oh, I think in the end the mental health is going to win out over anything else, because if your crew morale isn't good, they're not going to get the science done anyhow. So if it comes down to sending a space-based version of Settlers of Catan or an extra scientific instrument, and we think the game is going to help astronauts' mental health, I think the game's going to win out, because loading them up with more science equipment that they're not going to be able to make use of because they're tired and exhausted and their mental health is poor and they're demoralized or whatever, it's not going to help.
A happier crew leads to better science. Although it poses a challenge, it is better to prioritize the mental state of a crew at the expense of mission utility.
This has been Mars in the Mind.